Talk Story Tuesday. We hope to be holding these informal get-togethers on a monthly basis, really indefinitely as we move forward with the West Kauai Energy Project. So with that said, I'd like to introduce some people from KIUC who are present, and I'm kind of going down my list. So Beth Tokioka is our communications manager. Let's see, Brad Rockwell is our chief of operations. We've got John Cox, who is in charge of our transmission and distribution for KIUC. We have, let's see, Shelley Pike, who is our communications person for KIUC, working for Beth. We have Cameron Cruz, who's in charge of engineering for KIUC. Brandy Holt, who's in charge of our regulatory side for KIUC. And if I missed anybody, feel free to stand up from the KIUC side. We also have several of our board members present. Alan Smith, our board chair, Dee Crowell, Peter Yukimura, Cal Morishige, David Ige. I think I saw Phil Tapian name. And am I missing any board members? If so, please.
David, this is Jan Ten Bruggen, Kate. I'm a board member, and I think you want to make the point that it's David Iha, not David Ige.
David Iha, yes. And thank you, Jan. Jan Ten Bruggen, Kate.
And Janet Cass.
Oh, hi, Janet. It's hard to see. There's so many names on my screen.
Right.
It's hard to pull everybody out. So thank you, Janet. And on the AES side, who's our partners on this project, I see Rob Cooper is on. If Rob could introduce the AES team, and then we'll turn it over to Beth to kick off our agenda.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, David, and aloha, everyone. Yeah, joining me from AES, Kirsten Punu, who's our community and stakeholder manager, and Cameron Hoy, who's our director of construction management for Hawaii. We also have several other key staff members, I think, who are local on Kauai or on the neighboring islands. So thank you all for your time today. We look forward to listening and learning together here and at future Talk Story events.
Okay, I think that's my cue. Aloha, everybody. I'm Beth Tokioka. And as David mentioned, I'm the communications manager for KIUC. We wanted to do these sessions actually in the community, obviously because of COVID. We are not able to do a large in-person meeting. So we appreciate everybody joining us via Zoom. We realize this is not optimal for really free-flowing open discussion, but we're going to do the best we can to have a good discussion and get your questions answered, and hopefully everybody can learn a little bit more about the project this evening. So just a few notes. We're going to start off where David is going to give us a brief overview of the project. I know many of you here know a lot about the project. We don't want to get too deep into it. We can answer questions for those who need more clarification after he does a brief overview. Then we'll go into questions and comments, and we'll try to manage that the best we can. So if you would like, you can enter a comment into the chat box, and then we'll read it, and we'll we'll read it, or and then have someone answer the question if it's a question. If you would like to ask your question live, you can use the raise hand button, and then we'll try to call on you in order and try to get through everybody. And we'll let David take the questions and then answer or decide who's the most appropriate person to answer the question. So we're going to be taking notes this evening. Obviously, this is great information for us to understand what our community is thinking about the project. And we're recording the meeting, so we'll be posting it as well for those who could not attend and would like to have some access to the information. But before we start, we wanted to do a quick poll. So we hope that you'll participate with us in this poll. It just is going to help us better understand who's with us today and your understanding of the project. So we have 3 questions on this poll. And the first question is asking how familiar you are with the project. So you could say, I'm very familiar. You could say, I'm somewhat familiar, or I don't know much about the project. And it'll really help us better understand how to frame our comments. The second question, we're just asking where you live. So we know, again, who's in the room. And then the third question is whether or not you are a KIUC member. So thank you. I see people are responding to the poll. Looks like we have quite a number of people who are at least somewhat familiar with the project or very familiar with the project. So that's great. And again, those of you who might be learning about this for the first time, we hope you will ask lots of questions this evening as well. We've got mostly folks from Kauai joining us this evening, and just a few from Oahu. And about 79% are members of KIUC. Okay, looks like we've got everybody has responded. We really appreciate your responses to those poll questions. I'm going to end the poll now. And see if we can share the results. I don't know if you can see that on the screen. Question number 1, 58% very familiar with the project. 35% somewhat familiar with the project. Only 8% really don't know much about the project. Again, 28% of you are from Kauai's west side, 63% from other places on Kauai, and a few from Oahu. And then 80% of our participants today are KIUC members. Great. So thank you all. I think that's helpful to us. I'm going to take down the poll now. And with that, I'll send it over to David again for some brief remarks.
David, you're muted.
Muted, David.
Thank you. I'm going to go pull up a screen and try to go through a quick PowerPoint. Won't be more than 5 to 10 minutes to run through everybody, kind of get a common understanding of the project, and then we'll take questions in a real informal manner. So let me see if I can succeed in sharing my screen. Did that work? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
First, we always like to walk through where Kauai gets its power from and our movement from 2009, where we up on the upper left, where we were 91% fossil fuel provided energy and 9% renewable, which was essentially all hydropower from our small legacy hydros. We moved really forward aggressively. By last year, we were almost 70% renewable, with 42% coming from the sun, 11% from biomass, and about 14% from hydro. So incredible progress as an island. Looking forward to 2025 and showing the impact of the West Kauai project coming online, we would be hitting almost 90% renewable, with 42% coming from the sun, 37% coming from hydro. So we would be well on our way towards the state's 100% mandate and years earlier. So it would be fabulous progress for us as an island, and really leading the industry in our renewable movements. This doesn't come without challenges. Right now, we're getting 100% of our energy from the sun and the renewables during the daylight hours, which makes a challenge to bring on any more renewables because the most cost-effective renewables are solar-based, and essentially all the solar that we bring on now has to go into storage because our grid does not have room for it. I have a slide on that in a second. And it's really moved from traditional where you can have 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours of storage tied in with the PV, where we need to take the entire output of the system. So it can be 8 hours or more of storage that we need now for our energy needs. This is a chart we use all the time. It shows our daily dispatch starting at midnight, rolling forward towards our morning peak at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and our evening peak at about 7 to 9 o'clock at night. What's really key here is the time from 9 in the morning till 5 p.m. As I said, you can see that ultimately all of our energy is coming from renewables. The gray part is oil-based, and there's no gray during the daylight time on an average day. The blue is hydro, the green is biomass, the yellow is straight to grid PV, and really interesting for our grid is the purple, because that is energy coming from batteries now. And you can see we are getting a substantial amount of our both daytime and nighttime peak load provided by batteries. The challenge now is to try to fill in the rest of the gray with renewables, and that is where we've got to have storage to move sunlight into the evening hours. Why this project? Well, as I said, this will push us close to 90% renewable. It's 25% of our renewable energy needs, and really important is it's got long duration storage. The pump storage and the reservoirs that'll hold the water will provide long duration, 12 hours or more of storage on a daily basis in a cost-effective way. So I can take not only all the energy that's coming from a large PV system that'll be tied in with this project, but it can also have significant energy stored for rainy days or periods when our grid otherwise can't call on renewable energy. So be able to take the immediate needs and also provide real energy security for us. This is just a quick listing of some of our partners on the project. We mentioned AES. The landowners are Agribusiness Development Corporation, Department of Land and Natural Resources, and Hawaiian Homelands. All three are landowners where parts of the project will be located. Reservoirs will be on both DHHL and DLNR land and on ADC land at various points of the project. This is a map showing on the far west side in Kauai where the project components hit. Way up at the top of Kauai State Park is the intakes where the water is diverted, goes through a ditch system to Pu'ulua Reservoir that's on a DLNR land, follows down the ditch to the Pu'umoe Divide, and now we're moving into DHHL land where there'll be a penstock that'll take the water down to the Pu'uopai Reservoir on their land. There'll also be a small power plant at the Pu'uopai powerhouse where it'll take the water coming out of the pipe that's carrying to the reservoir to produce a renewable energy. It'll then go down, pipe down to over the cliff and down to the Mana Plain, where it'll feed a larger renewable generator, and it'll also go into a reservoir, the Mana Reservoir down on the plains. Close to the Mana Reservoir, there'll be a large PV system, 35 megawatt solar system, be the largest one we'd have on our island. Would be two large pumps, likely two large pumps, maybe more, to pump the water uphill from that PV during the daytime. And overall, as I said, it'll be about 25% of our energy from that. A lot of community benefits, improved roads and maintenance and access for the Pu'ulua Reservoir up on DHHL land, DLNR land, I'm sorry. This reservoir right now is at about a third of capacity, very popular for fishing and community access, but it's really challenged to stay in service, and it's going to take a lot of money to upgrade it to keep it in service for the people to use. Good part about this project is we will do that. We'll rehab it, get it in line with dam safety requirements, and get it up to 100% in service for fishing and recreational use. Going down the system to DHHL, we'll update grade the Pu'opai Reservoir. That's even in worse shape than the Pu'ulua. It's currently totally empty, other than just holding some storm water occasionally, but it's essentially holds no water today. We'll rehab that, get that back into full productive use. That's a key part of the pump storage system, because that'll serve as the upper holding area for water that we pump up during the daytime area. Nice part of this, we're bringing water, we're going to rehab that reservoir. We're going to improve the roads on DHHL land there, and that'll enable homesteaders to get onto the land. There's going to be about 200 agriculture homestead sites and housing sites there. It'll also provide water for community agriculture projects on the DHHL land. Rolling on down the hill, there's the Mana Reservoir, showing it fully back in service. That's the final holding point of the water as it comes down. Water from that will go into the plains to serve agriculture needs on KAA land. Be pressurized irrigation provided from it, and there'll be the large solar field will be in the vicinity of the Mana Reservoir. All these reservoirs, in addition to renewable energy use, equivalent of storage and community use, will also help the firefighters and help fight fires on the west side, because it'll be easy for the helicopters, firefighting helicopters, to dip in and grab water and use when the forest fires take place. We're doing this KIUC, AES, and in the Kauai Community Science Center Innovation Grant are going to be working with high schoolers as the project goes forward to teach them about renewable energy, to teach them how the project operates, and to further encourage science and technology, mathematics curriculum in the high schools. So we'll reach out to the students and try to improve their skill sets on the science side. It's a lot of very cutting edge science will be going into this, and our and AES engineers will be working with the students to help transfer some of their knowledge. Project's gone through mediation agreement, groundbreaking mediation agreement in 2017, which assessed all the water needs for the various stakeholders, came to an agreement, and really helps ensure that the streams will get adequate water. The renewable energy project will have enough to make it work. DHHL will be able to serve their agriculture needs, and ADC down at the bottom will have enough water for their agriculture. So really was a groundbreaking mediation settlement that helps lay the path for this project. We're well into the Chapter 343 environmental compliance. Our environmental assessment's been filed, is out for public comment now. Extensive amount of studies have been done in association with the environmental assessment. I'm not going to name them all, but really has been a very detailed look at the impact of the project, and we're quite comfortable that it's comprehensive and has really assessed the situation with it. Talked about AES and we introduced AES, but why is AES part of this project? Well, it really came down to financial capability and technical construction ability with them. They're a large company, worldwide renewable developer. They have done 2 successful projects with us on Kauai, and they bring a big balance sheet to help make this project successful. This is a really fabulous project for our island's energy needs and for the community benefits, but part of this fabulous project is it got to be pretty expensive from a capital side, and it got to be just really too big for our small co-op to be willing to take it on our balance sheet. where AES could come in as a large company and they can absorb the risk of the project much better than us. They're also very sophisticated in realizing tax credits, which are a significant part of this project. And they're really good at building things. So we're happy to have them come on, help transfer some of the risk on this and keep the project viable and at a good, attractive price for the membership on the island of Kauai. I think I've talked about most of this. One key item on the benefits to KIUC members and really all the people of Kauai is the reduction in greenhouse gases from this project. It's got really about a 1-year payback on all the greenhouse gas that goes into the construction of the project, all the materials, the operations of the equipment that makes it. It'll take about a year, maybe 2, of the project operating, and then all the rest of the life of the project, it's totally positive for us, and it'll save over 2 million cubic tons of greenhouse gas emissions and about 8 million gallons of diesel fuel that we won't be burning each year because of this project. So really good from a greenhouse gas side. It'll also be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 jobs as this project goes through its construction phase. Big part of the project's keeping it on schedule. I talked about tax credits, and realizing the investment tax credits for this is really critical. This project is eligible for 26% federal tax credits, but to do that, the project has to be completed by the end of 2024. It's doable, but it's a pretty tight timeline, and to get there, we really have to have support from the agency partners, from the community, and we all need to work really hard to keep it going forward. So I think I went a little bit more than 10 minutes, but I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'll wrap it up on my side and open it up for questions from anybody.
David, we did have one question in the chat box, and that is, I think you touched upon this, but the question is, will this bring bill prices down for KIUC?
Yes, thank you, Beth. This project will. It's a question of how much. Ultimately, it depends on what the equivalent price of oil would be that we would have been using in its place to if we didn't have the renewable project. Brad's probably got a better handle on the numbers, but I think it was over the life of the project, we were estimating it would save 150 million plus for our membership. And on a monthly basis, depending on what the equivalent cost of oil will be, it could reduce it from a little to a pretty substantial amount on the monthly bill. Brad, you got anything you want to add on that?
I think it was 157 to close to 200 million net present value savings.
So it's always it's hard to say what these projects save because we're saving money today with the ones we have in place, but it's based on what we would be paying without them. So it's hard to look on a current bill basis and say you would have been paying $10 a month more or $20 a month more without them, but certainly is forecast to lower everybody's bill. One of the key reasons we're doing it from an economic side outside of the environmental side.
Great. Do we have other questions? Either in the chat or if someone wanted to pose a live question.
Looks like Dennis has a question.
Okay, Dennis.
Thank you, David, for the presentation. As commissioner for Hawaiian Homes, we're always looking at ways to advance the needs of our beneficiaries. You mentioned the student involvement. Will we be looking at any type of internship program through KIC for these students to sort of look at maybe a workforce in the KIUC family?
There certainly could be interns that are associated with this project. We do hire summer interns pretty much every year, depending on availability and our financial condition at that year. We can range from hiring a couple to hiring sometimes 10 or more interns. So it would certainly be something that could happen.
Okay, thank you.
David, there are more questions in the chat box. I'm not sure if you can see them or not. Dan Giovanni asked the question, is this project the most economical way to achieve 100% renewable energy?
Yeah, I think given where we sit as an island, PV is our cheapest source of energy. This is bringing on this large PV field tied in with this project is going to be at about 7 cents a kilowatt hour, by far the cheapest PV brought online in Kauai. Pump storage and the storage on the bulk scale that we need. Water-based storage is much cheaper than battery-based storage, which is the only alternative for this. So overall, when it all comes online, everything combined, we think the project will be about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So given the constraints that we have on daytime energy use, that is the cheapest available technology here. We really are limited as an island. We've been very successful, but our resources are essentially PV and hydro that we can bring online. We have a biomass facility, but biomass is very expensive, and we don't see any more expansion of biomass. Wind that's done on other islands is not really viable here because one, we're small scale, and two, because of our endangered species. Where small scale wind comes in is pricing becomes not competitive at the small size that we would be doing here. We don't have any geothermal resources, so really we're down to trying still to take the best advantage of PV, large scale PV, but we have to store it, and water is by far the most cost effective long duration storage technology available today.
Next question, David, in the chat box is jobs for locals, question mark. Is that just short-term construction jobs?
Hi, Marion, and I'm going to ask Rob Cooper from AES to talk a little bit about the construction phase and how many jobs and how that would be handled.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, David. So yeah, I'll let Cameron on my team touch on the construction jobs, but it will be a combination of construction and long-term operation jobs. Like, so this project has a long life cycle. We'll be responsible for maintaining the system, maintaining the, the improvements to the reservoirs that David mentioned. That will all come with long-term local Kauai job creation. And then with regard to the construction jobs, Cameron, do you want to chime in with that?
Yes, sure. Yeah, it's AES's intent in reference to use Kauai contractors and labor here for both short-term construction and long-term permanent jobs, just as we've done in the past with our other two projects we successfully built here on Kauai. I think there was a number. Was there a number of expected construction workers? Because it's a little bit early in development, but we're looking at maximum of about 180 to 200. That's complete short-term construction, and that will be during short durations in the solar field where you have those maximum numbers. Typically, on average, you're going to see 20 to 40, 60 constant construction working on from Kokee all the way to the Anafi.
I saw a question, and thank you, Rob and Cameron. I saw a question on the path of the water that we're storing. The storing of the water will be between the Mana Reservoir down on the plains and the Pu'uopai Reservoir on DHHL land. That's where we'll be pumping the water back and forth from. The Pu'ulua Reservoir will be more for, we'll just store water that can go into the system if there's a need for it. We can take water when there's a lot of it coming down in rainier periods and store, and can use it for utilization for energy and irrigation when it's drier periods. There's a question on consideration of sea level rise and placement of the PV on the Mana Plain. And I think I'd like to turn that over to Cameron Cruz to talk a little bit about where the PV panels will be placed and how that's how sea level rise impacts it. And go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, so in regard to the acreage of the solar panels, yeah, sea level rise was taken into consideration. The mounting for the solar panels can be above sea level rise, going out into the future. So we shouldn't see any impact on any of the potential sea level rise negatively impacting the solar panels going forward of the project.
David, this is Michelle Mora. Quick question regarding, it sounded like there may be interim uses for the water that's going to be able to be used in the farmlands. I would imagine there's a priority towards where it's going to go first, but can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a little chart we put together that kind of shows where the water, how the water flows that comes in that's diverted for this project. Let's see here. It's always a scary thing when I have to convert my screen. This is one that we've been working on internally, and it may change a little bit, but we're trying to illustrate, starting at the top at the diversions, the 11 million gallons per day rolling average that goes into the project. And a little bit of it goes to things people don't think about, like the DLNR park restrooms, a little bit for the ADC Malka ag tenants, but focusing really, a lot of it starts off going for DHHL needs, 6.9 million gallons, up to 6.9 million gallons per day of that 11 million is set to go to DHHL for their agriculture needs. Rolling past DHHL uses down at the Mana Plains, that could be about 3.5 million gallons per day that they would use. That is on a rolling basis. It's an average utilization. So sometimes there'll be more water in the system. Sometimes there'll be less. Sometimes the agriculture needs will be more. Sometimes it'll be less. Ultimately, if there's a lot of water in the system and not a lot of agriculture needs at that time because it's raining heavily, the water will be either stored in the 3 reservoirs or it'll go into the ditch and be diverted out to the ocean. There was a question, let me stop the share. That's kind of a segue into a question about how the water will be, let's see if I can find it here. The impacts to the shoreline at the point of the water discharge in the EA. And I'd like to turn that over to Don Huff to talk a little bit about how the water discharge is handled on this project. I didn't introduce Dawn. Dawn is with Jewel Group. She's been consulting on this project with us for almost a decade and has really been part of the lead on the technical side in the early development before we transitioned over to AES. So Dawn?
Yes, I can talk about the discharge. Thank you, David. So whatever water is not used for agriculture anywhere along the flow line will be discharged into the storm drain system on the Mana Plain, which is an active discharge system that gets pumped out to the ocean on PMRF land at the Kauai pumps. And our project discharge will be approximately 1.75 miles inland into that storm discharge system from the tail race out of Mana Reservoir. Sorry, David, do you want me to go more into details on?
No, I think that's enough. If people have follow-up questions, they can certainly ask them and we will address them. And I'm jumping around here a little bit, so if I skip over your question, feel free to re-ask or raise your hand. It's kind of hard to follow them all, but there's a question about the cutting edge technologies the students would be learning about. And I think that's an excellent one for Brad or Cameron to talk about the technology of this project, some of the innovations that would be going into this energy production.
I think that sort of from my perspective, the best aspect of this project is that it's not only an energy project, it's a renewable energy project. It's not only a renewable energy project, it's an irrigation project as well. And it's got a lot of community benefits. So from a student perspective, it's unique in that it's providing not only clean energy and lowering our electric bills, but it's also providing a lot of community benefits with the different aspects as David described. So there's really a lot of points, whether people are interested in, water ecosystems, irrigation, farming, agriculture, or energy, solar technology, hydroelectric technology. There's a lot of things to tap into with this project for an example for students.
Thank you, Brad. There's a question about the importance of qualifying for the tax credits and asking what other approvals outside of the PUC and agency agreements are required for this project to reach completion. Again, I'm going to flip this over to Dawn she can talk about. There's an awful lot of permits required and approvals needed for this project. So Dawn can talk about a few of them.
Yes, there is a very long list. There's a table in the draft EA if you're interested in seeing a complete list, but a few of the primary ones is a conservation district use permit, a stream channel alteration permit, a stream diversion works permit. Both of those would be with the Water Commission. I'll back up a little bit. Conservation district use permit is with OCCL. We also will be required to get an Army Corps permit and a 401 with Department of Health, NPDES permit with Department of Health, SHPD review and Section 106 will both be part of the permitting process for the project. And there are lots on the county level as well. Those are some of the primary ones on the state and federal level, but there are several on the county level as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of permits on this project. I apologize, Jade Moss. I see you have your hand up and take your question.
Oh, thank you, David. I had a question. There's a couple of questions pointing in the chat, pointing to why this isn't a closed system for the water, but that's kind of, I think hopefully I'll get to that, but I'll use my time to ask about the 350 acres of solar. To compare, what are the other solar farms on Kauai? How many acres? Because 350 seems like it's huge. And then how many of the megawatts are going back to the grid and how many megawatts are being used to pump the water back up?
Brad, that sounds like a perfect question for you.
Numbers. Hey, Jade, thanks for the question. I'll cover the energy portion. So our other solar energy projects, our other largest is a 20 megawatt AC solar project in Kauai. I believe the original footprint was close to 200 acres, but the final is a little less than that. So this would be, to compare, this would be 35 megawatts AC. So more than 1.5 times that. And so that's why the larger footprint. As far as about 350 acres, the final layout design has not been completed, but it's going to be somewhere around that. The amount of megawatts going toward pumping versus to the grid, I'll take that as you mean megawatt hours, the energy being used for pumping versus going to the grid. So I want to say it's, and I don't have the model in front of me, but we've done detailed 15-minute models for an entire year on this, and it's somewhere in the 20% or so of the energy would go direct to the grid. That's going to be mostly during the early morning hours and the late afternoon hours, or basically any time we have oil or fossil fuel dispatch that we can offset with this project. We'll consider sending that solar energy direct to the grid to offset or eliminate our need to run fossil fuel units. If we're already operating at 100% renewable, which, like as David explained, we are most of the time during the day, then we'll be using that solar energy to pump water uphill, and that's where the bulk of the energy is going to be go to, is those pumps that pump the water uphill. You had a question about closed loop. Did you want to take that, David, or you want me to continue?
I can take that, Brad, or you can feel free to jump in. Yeah, this a key part of this project and really of the Waimea mediation and the watershed agreement were to provide water for agriculture, both at DHHL and ADC KAA land. So agriculture has always been a key component of this project, and essentially the parts that we're not using for pump storage, which is really just recirculating energy, will be the agriculture delivery focus of the project, where we're running water down to use for agriculture. And since the water is going to be flowing downhill, we're going to spin turbines and make renewable energy. But agriculture and water delivery has always been a key part. It's been a key part of the mediation agreement. KIUC was part of it, DHHL was part of it, and ADC, in addition to some community groups that were part of the agreement. And KIUC was allocated, looking at all the needs, all the uses, the stream needs versus the agriculture needs. And ultimately 11 million gallons was decided by all the parties and by Commission on Water Resource Management to be the appropriate amount going to agriculture. So because of that, we're delivering the water and making its most beneficial use of it is to use in addition to agriculture to make renewable energy out of it. Brad, do you have anything to add on that, or Don?
No, I think it's just, I would just say simply, we're building the project that was envisioned with the West Kauai, with the Waimea Watershed Agreement. In there, it specifically calls for diversion amounts that can go through for the energy project and to be used for agriculture. So I know there's been this, I'm not sure how it got sort of misconstrued. We've heard it not only from you, but from others, that there was a thinking this would be a closed loop, just moving water between two reservoirs, but that's never been the intent. That's not the intent of the watershed agreement. And we're essentially building the project that everyone signed on to in that watershed agreement back in 2017. I know I'm looking at the chat, and there was a question about household bill saving, where I'm trying to dig up our exhibit on that. We did calculate that for our application with the PUC. When I get that in my fingertips, we'll let you know about that. Clarification on water path pumped to Pu'uopai or Pu'ulua. Water is gonna be pumped between Mana, down on the Mana Plain, Mana Reservoir, and Pu'uopai. So water is not pumped back to Pu'ulua. Will the power station be before or past the base? It's Mauka of PMRF. So, if you look on a map and you look at find Mana Reservoir, it's going to be essentially right there, right next to that reservoir. I think we covered sea level rise. How does this project compare to the KIUC project in Anahola, and how has that project benefited the homesteaders? This is a much larger project. The Anahola project did have a homestead benefit agreement with the Anahola Hawaiian Homestead Association. This project it's just different. That most of the Anahola project was solar only. There was no infrastructure improvements like this project brings. So this project brings significant improvement to roads, road access for DHHL lands, significant improvement in that it brings irrigation water. It's also going to provide for the ability to get electricity up there. So DHHL can essentially issue leases on those areas. So it's bringing more significant benefits than what the benefit agreement was for Anahola, but in a different form of actual physical infrastructure.
Yeah, it's bringing, I think it's tens of millions of dollars in benefits and infrastructure investments that otherwise would not be possible from the state agencies, including keeping Pu'ulua in service. A lot of challenges to keeping reservoirs in service with the dam safety requirements, and it would be millions of dollars that the state would have to invest to keep that in service, not to mention bringing these other reservoirs back into a productive use, along with the road upkeep and energy needs. We're gonna, when we talk about road upkeep, we will be increasing the upkeep of the roads in all the reservoirs. It's not like the roads are gonna be paved to Pu'ulua. When we're done, they'll be in Pu'uopai, they'll be four-wheel drive accessible, but we will be keeping them at that level. If they're washed away, we'll be helping to put them back in access. That'll be part of our requirements. We'll also be keep upgrading we'll keep the ditches in good service, so the agriculture will be reliably served by them, which is a significant investment in upkeep and keeping the water availability for the plains and for DHHL.
I see from where I'm at, scrolling through the chat still, I know we're way behind a lot of messages here, but I'm trying to make sure we got everything. And Cookie had a question about, will it be cheaper to go solar with more batteries or build this hydro project? And we get that question a lot too. Why not just do more solar and batteries? And the thing that hopefully came through from David's presentation is that we, if we were to do more solar and batteries, it couldn't be along the lines of what we've done previously. We would have to significantly increase the size of the battery because we need enough storage capability to store essentially all the solar energy that's generated during the daytime now, because we're already running on most days 100% renewable from the early morning to the late afternoon. So the size of that battery, we did do an analysis. If we could just way oversize the battery, it would actually be a much more expensive project than this one. And there's a lot of other very technical reasons as to why it's better to go this route, as far as rotating synchronous generators instead of inverter-based generation. But I won't really get into that here. Happy to address that offline with anyone.
Brad, I'll just add in the lifetime of battery, like lithium ion batteries versus water-based storage is, you know, if we did this equivalent in lithium ion battery storage, we'd have to rebuild the whole thing in 20-25 years, whereas this can take a 50-year life cycle. So just add that as well.
Okay, looking through, did we cover the height of the Pu'ulua Reservoir?
I didn't see that question, Brad, so you can run with that one to see it.
Yeah, I don't have the exact height. Don may have it, but I want to say it'll be. Do you have that off the tip of your?
I don't have height. I know that it's going to be about 200 million gallons storage.
Right. And it's like 60 right now, correct? Yeah. So, since the slope is there for every increase in volume, you're not necessarily going up the same vertical height, because as you go up the slope, you get a little more surface area, if you will. So we can try and look that up for you. Sorry, we don't have that right off the top of our head.
I can say that the height of the embankments actually will be, so that for new dam safety requirements, the slopes have to be less steep. So it will be very similar to the historical design with less steep slopes. If that helps you envision what it might look like at the end, after rehabilitation is finished.
Don, there's a question about the cost of KIUC for using the water. Can you talk about how the water is paid for, or the use of the water, costs are allocated between all the participants?
I can. So KIUC will need to get a water lease, and through that water lease, we will be paying lease rates to DLNR for diversion and delivery of that water. And then, as has been mentioned here several times, we'll be delivering that water to end users such as DHHL and tenants on ADC land. They will not be paying for the water. That's a cost being borne by the project. We're paying for the infrastructure to deliver the water. I say we, the project is paying for infrastructure to deliver the water, and we'll be paying the lease rates required for the water lease.
Thank you, Don. There's a question about whether rebuilding and enlarging existing reservoirs is cheaper and simpler than putting in new reservoirs.
No.
It's still going. It's just don't have any audio.
I think the answer to that is not necessarily cheaper theoretically. I think if you could just start and build one in the right location, it would be cheaper, but as a practical matter, it'd be extremely difficult to site and locate new reservoirs, and these ones are there, that it's a matter of just rehabbing them. A lot of the structures are there and can be reused. The dam may have to be taken down and rebuilt, but the materials there, a substantial amount of it can be reused in the construction. Some of the engineers on the call can talk a little bit more about that. Cameron or Brad, if you want to, on the construction side.
Can take that one.
Sorry, Brad, did you say you're going to take that one?
Oh, I was saying Cameron can take that one if you want.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Just about I think ultimately the construction or reconstruction of the reservoirs, what's involved with that versus what would be involved if it was a greenfield reservoir site.
You know, I think with the existing reservoirs, what's going to happen is to get the capacity of the reservoirs to where they need to be for the project. The existing reservoirs at Mana, at Pu'ulua, at Pu'uopai, they're going to have to be dug out so that we can get the capacity that we need for the project. I think I saw Taryn had a question about the estimated amount of water that we would be pumped up back up to the reservoir. So that would be up to Pu'uopai Reservoir. I looked in the EA here, and on page 19 of the EA, basically what it talks about is the pumping range being able to go 3 million gallons per day to 120 million gallons per day in generating mode, and up to 155 million gallons per day in pumping mode. So to answer your question, Taryn, it was 155 million gallons per day maximum. But going back to the reservoirs and what they need to do, after they clear out the sediment, get the capacity, they're going to have to put in a liner there so that we can maintain that capacity for the life of the project. There's going to be, obviously, there's going to be permitting for that, but compared to a greenfield reservoir, permitting is going to be much easier, we envision, versus having to site and go forward with something brand new.
One of the things to remember on the reservoirs is that since we're only pumping half the day, when we talk, 120 million gallons per day or something like that, we're moving that between the two reservoirs, and seeing as how Mana is limited to 80 million gallons and Pu'uopai is 88, we're only moving, I think on the sunniest days, somewhere around 55 million gallons, maybe 60 million gallons between the two reservoirs over the course of the daytime.
Thank you, Brad. I see Jay, do you have a question again?
Thank you. When I was looking at the draft EA, I noticed that income will be paid for to the ADC for housing the storage field or the solar field. It would be kind of nice to see DHHL also get rental income for the powerhouse, the Pu'uopai powerhouse, as well as the reservoir. Because just historically, we've seen that DHHL has been severely underfunded as a department. And then we're also, I mean, I speak for myself, but there might be other people on this call who aren't happy with the ADC. So seeing them get money is kind of like, ugh, but not seeing the DHHL get money is kind of a bummer. Just because historically with their, the audit, how horrible that audit was. And I'm sure this was all developed prior to the audit coming out and everything with the ADC. But we're also, myself, I am not too pleased with the tenants of the ADC farmers. So it would just be nice to see some rental income going to DHHL also.
And DHHL will be receiving rental income from this project.
Okay. I used the search thingy I put income in the search thing, and that's the only time it came up was when it was talking about ADC.
No, they will be.
The project requires leases for, from all the landowners essentially, and they're going to get lease rent for that.
Yeah, in addition to all the infrastructure. There's a question about, it's a statement really, that there's been delays in phase 1 of the mediation agreement, which is ultimately modifications to the diversions to update them and make them more modern and able to adjust to water levels, which is correct. There has been some delays in that. And the question ultimately was, there are delays in getting approvals of this project. Will that affect eligibility of the federal tax credit? And how will that be addressed? That's an excellent question. There is a tight time frame on this project. It's doable, but it's fairly tight, and it needs to be done by, well, ultimately AES needs to be comfortable that they can get the project complete by the end of 2024 for it to go forward. So the development timeline was laid out. It can be done in a reasonable manner, but there cannot be material delays in the permitting or approvals, or the project would not continue. So we need it to go on a reasonable timeline. AES needs to be assured that the project can go on a reasonable timeline, or it will be in jeopardy.
And David, just to clarify, the tax credit eligibility is through 2025, not 2024. So I just wanted to correct that. And then, yeah, like you said, we are, for everybody, we are able to capture the improvement of the reservoirs and the batteries and everything in addition to the solar, and get the full 26% investment tax credit. That, if it's not done by the end of 2025, drops down significantly and would greatly affect the benefits that Brad mentioned in terms of like the rates and the savings to the members. So it's pretty critical.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
I see Anna had a question about, is there a direct benefit to the West Side community as compensation for bearing the project? And aside from the benefits we've mentioned and the infrastructure improvements, this project is, no different from any other energy project we've done around the island. So, for example, we've done, there's solar projects at Port Allen. There's a fossil fuel power plant at Port Allen. There's, big solar farm and batteries in Kauai. There's one in Koloa. There's Anahola. So there's renewable energy projects all over the island. There's no direct benefits to each community for bearing the projects. It's, it's sort of an island wide, I guess we're all in this together, right? So we're trying to wean ourselves off of fossil fuel and share those benefits across the whole island with cleaner air and more stable and lower electric rates. One thing I wanted to add on that, though, is that I think the nearest residence to this project is at least 3 miles, maybe 4 miles. So this is unlike Kauai, for example, where we built a solar field, you know, within a mile of homes, or Port Allen, which is certainly very close to homes, the Port Allen power plant. This project really isn't in a community. It's out on the Manaw Plain, and most of the project infrastructure will be up on DHHL lands and on the Manaw Plain. So.
And in terms of project infrastructure, other than the powerhouses, which will be, hopefully won't have much of a visual impact or not very large, we're actually going to be improving the infrastructure. We'll be making the reservoirs, putting them back into service. There'll be better recreation from them, better access to the project locations and to the recreational opportunities for the west side, really all the people of Kauai. So this is different than other ones where it's kind of taken away land. The real land that'll be taken away is what's going to have the solar panels on it, but that's down on the Manaw Plains. That's not accessible to the residents. It's on ADC land, and ultimately that's land that we've worked with KIA and ADC. It's not the prime farmland. It's less desirable, and there's plenty of farmland still available out there outside of where the PV panels would be located. So relatively minor, and to the extent there is impact, it's really positive. Shifting gears, I see a couple questions on solar, and one of them was specifically about Anahola and not being able to have solar on their homes to make money back. That's essentially a true statement. It's got nothing to do directly with the project. It goes back to the whole situation on our grid where we don't have load available during the daytime for people to put PV on and sell back to KIUC. As a cooperative, our position on that has been, we're not going to limit PV on homes, but to the extent you can use it for your own, we won't limit it to the extent you can use it to offset your own needs. But the days of being able to put much bigger systems than you need and then selling it back to us are gone, because ultimately there's no load to take that energy. So all you would be doing is selling it to us, and we'd be curtailing other energy on our system. So you can build a system bigger. You have to have batteries to do it, but ultimately you have to do it to offset your own utilization. And these projects really aren't, all they're doing is reflecting the same physics, that there's no energy or very limited availability to take energy to the grid during the day. It's got to go into storage.
Aloha, my name is Harold Vidina, and right now I'm the president of the Kekaha Hawaiian Homestead Association. This project directly impacts what we're doing up at Puapai. We've got 231 acre lease from DHHL, and this project runs right through, and in fact, we're around Puapai Reservoir. And all these questions are really good when you talk about, but when you get to parts per million and gallons, that's way out of my league. What I'm looking at, and what seems to be a silent concern, is compensation. What I can tell you as the leaseholder for Puapai is we're not looking for a monetary compensation, so to speak. We're looking for help from KIUC and its affiliates to help us up there, which they are. So I can tell you, as a person that's up there at least once a week and going through the area and looking at it and talking to people from KIUC, one of the things I think that would help is what we would say boots on the ground. Looking at these maps and all that is fine, but to actually see the way the project is running, especially for the people in the Kekaha community, So I would invite you to contact me or Brad or Don, and let us coordinate to take you up there to see what KIUC is planning. This way you'll get the first-hand look instead of looking at the AE. I got, thank you for printing me a copy, 1,500 pages, and 3/4 of that doesn't apply to me. I'm still going through it, but to get eyes and boots on the ground up there to see the way the project runs, what KIUC is planning to do, it's unbelievable. And the way they'll help us is not monetary, but it'll help us get the water there. Right now, we're running with the ditches. When it rains, it clogs up. We've got a couple miles of ditches. We got to go in a lot of places by hand and pick and shovel. With the help of KIUC coming in, all this will be eliminated. And we've got places where water we can't reach it yet. With their help, it'll help us greatly. We've got a lease, and we're trying to bring the Hawaiians back on the island. I apologize if people get offended, but this is Hawaiian homeland, so I'm speaking on behalf of the Hawaiian people. We're trying to get our people back up there, and we need help. And KIUC is helping us even to this day. The contract's not sealed, nothing signed, but they're still helping us where they can. So I don't know, maybe it sounds like I'm trying to sell this project, in a way I am, because we need help up there. And I assure you what they're talking about, I'm seeing it at first hand. So I'm inviting those of you who have any questions to come up there, get hold of me, and we can go take a ride up there and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Appreciate that. And yeah, if anybody is interested in that, they can reach out to Beth Tokioka, who's on this call, and she can put you in contact with, or she can coordinate with Harold and Brad and Don about potentially going to see the site. I think that's an excellent recommendation. There's been some questions on EIS versus EA in this project, and KIUC is following the environmental requirements under Hawaii Revised Statute 343. That starts off with going through doing the environmental assessment. We did extensive studies really to an EIS level. The studies have not found any significant impacts, but that's how the process works. We file the EA, it's out for public comment. We'll carefully look at all the comments, and the way the process works, if something is missed where there's an impact on it that's not covered under the EA could be modified, could be expanded, or it could move into an EIS depending on the significance of the impact. So we're following the environmental review process, and ultimately that leads us to where it goes, whether the EA is accepted as adequate or whether it needs to have more studies to support it, or whether it goes into an EIS, just falls out of the comments and our responses to them.
David, I did get was able to find that bill impact exhibit that we did for the application. So, it starts out where it's, a little less and a little more, because the way we forecast this bill impact is, we expect oil prices to increase somewhat over time, and inflation and things like that, whereas the cost of this project is going to remain stable over the life of it. So if you look at the average over the whole life of the project, it's about a $20 a month bill savings for the average 500 kWh user, which is kind of the average we use. Some people use more, some people use less energy, or about $240 a year. So that answers that question.
Thank you, Brad. I'm seeing his face there, so I've been a little remiss in not inviting KIUC's board chairman, Alan Smith, to say a few words if he would so desire. The floor is yours, Alan.
Okay. Thanks, David. We're from the west side. We feel that this is a great project for the people of Kauai. The co-op is your co-op. It's not us and them, and we should really consider what's good for all of us. Our doors are open, our ears are open. Really, we invite questions, if any. A field trip to the site is great. And you got 9 elected directors, and reach out to them and ask them questions. And really, and if something's of great concern, or obviously the ultimate thing is we get reelected every 3 years. So, you know, if people are not satisfied or are very disinterested in what the present directors who represent you are performing, it's your vote to cast. But really, we're hopeful that this project is well understood. First of all, well understood, and then we move forward. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Alan. There's a question about a 65-year water lease and how can that not have a significant impact on the environment of the stream or stream life. And Don can supplement my response to this, but I think ultimately that's the process. The Hawaii has a very detailed water law, water review process, and the Commission of Water Resource Management administers that. They set the interim in-stream flow standards that consider the life of the stream and balance the stream needs with other beneficial uses of the project or of the water from a stream, which in this case is agriculture and renewable energy production. But that's all really the Commission of Water Resource Management, and their assessments are the key drivers of the water allocation between the streams and the projects. And that can change over the life of a project. It's not a fixed amount that stays in play forever. That's why it's called an interim in-stream flow stream. It can change based on uses. Don, you want to supplement that at all, or?
No, I think you covered it well.
So I don't see any more questions queued up. I guess I'd ask if anybody has a question, they can raise their hands and we can call on it, or we can start to wind down for today. As I said to start this meeting off, this isn't going to be the only opportunity people have to talk with us. We're going to be holding these once a month. Want to keep it informal, want to be open and receptive to questions, but even outside of the monthly meetings, you can feel free to reach out to us. Beth is coordinating our responses, so you can reach out to Beth Tokioka. She'll come on and give you your contact information. And as Alan said, Alan's our board chairman. It is an elected board, elected by a lot of you folks here, and they're very interested in community input and involvement in this project. So really thank everybody for participating. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beth to give her contact and we can wrap it up for tonight.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry. I've had technical difficulties, so I can't see anything, but thankfully you can hear me. Yes, thanks everybody for joining in. If you would like to contact me, you could send me an email. My email address is btokioka, BTOKIOKA @KIUC.coop, or you could call me here at the office. The number is 246-4348. Or if you don't have a pencil, just call KIUC's main line and ask for me, and they'll get you to me. You could connect with me by phone or leave me a voicemail. I'll be happy to get back and get you information that you might need. And the next Talk Story Tuesday would be taking place in October, on the second Tuesday of October, which would be October 12th. And if we're not able to do that out in the community, we will do it again via Zoom. So check our Facebook page for a meeting location, and we'd love to see you back again next month.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. Thank you again so much, everybody, for taking time out of your busy lives to participate in this call. And we really are happy for your involvement and interest in what's going on with KIUC and with this project. So aloha, everyone, and have a great evening.